Welcome to Falcon Times and thank you for being with us today. The story we bring you is about a new push from Washington, one that has the potential to reshape global economics and politics. President Donald Trump is calling on European Union and NATO member states to impose tariffs as high as 100% on China and India. His reasoning is direct: cut off the flow of money to Moscow by targeting the two biggest buyers of Russian oil and trade goods, and the war in Ukraine will be forced toward an end. The question, however, is not only whether this move is bold, but whether it is possible. NATO is, at its core, a military alliance. It can deploy troops, it can defend members, it can deter aggression. But NATO has no authority to set tariffs, to regulate trade, or to impose economic penalties. That power rests with the European Union. The EU does have the legal framework to set tariffs on imports, but doing so requires agreement from all 27 member states. In practice, that is a very high bar, especially when national interests clash. Russia's war has already dragged on for years. Europe has imposed sanctions on Moscow, on banks, energy exports, and oligarchs. Yet Russia adapted, selling its oil and gas to willing buyers in Asia, particularly India and China. India has become one of the top importers of Russian crude, buying at discounted prices that ease the strain on its growing economy. China, meanwhile, has maintained steady trade with Moscow, giving Putin a market lifeline at a time when Western doors are closed. Trump's idea is simple: punish India and China for enabling Russia by making their trade with Europe and America more expensive. In theory, this forces both countries to reconsider their reliance on Russian imports. But the reality is far more complex. For India, its ties with Russia are deep, stretching back decades in defense and energy. At the same time, India is a partner for the West in balancing China's power in Asia. Would Europe risk damaging that relationship by hitting New Delhi with steep tariffs? For China, the risks are even greater. Europe is one of Beijing's largest markets. A tariff war would not only invite retaliation, but could disrupt supply chains, raise prices for European consumers, and put industries like German carmakers and French luxury brands in jeopardy. There is also the question of effectiveness. Would China and India really abandon Russia under pressure, or would they double down, finding alternative markets and suppliers? China, after all, withstood years of tariffs during Trump's first presidency and continued to grow. India may decide that cheap Russian oil is worth the risk of higher tariffs, especially if its own growth depends on affordable energy. Inside Europe, the politics are equally fraught. Some governments, particularly in Eastern Europe, might support Trump's idea, seeing it as a way to tighten the noose around Putin. Others, like Hungary or even Germany, may resist, arguing that the costs for European economies are too high. Reaching a consensus would be extremely difficult. For Trump, the appeal of this idea is clear. It is bold, it is headline-grabbing, and it casts him as the one leader willing to take dramatic action to end the war. He has often promised that he could deliver peace quickly, even on day one. By pushing tariffs, he signals that he is prepared to go beyond traditional sanctions and use trade as a weapon. Whether it is realistic is another matter. The stakes are not just economic. They are strategic. If Europe were to follow Trump's lead, relations with both India and China could be severely strained. Beijing could retaliate by limiting access to rare earths or blocking European exports. India could pivot away from the West at a time when Washington and Brussels see it as a vital partner. Instead of isolating Russia, the move could push Moscow, Beijing, and New Delhi closer together in a new axis of resistance. And yet, the war in Ukraine grinds on. Ceasefire talks fail, battles rage, and Ukrainians continue to suffer. For leaders in the West, the temptation to escalate economic pressure is real. They may feel that the existing sanctions have not been enough, and that without targeting Russia's major trading partners, Putin will not be forced to compromise. So can the EU and NATO impose tariffs on India and China? Legally, NATO cannot. The EU could, but only if all members agree. Strategically, it would be a gamble. Economically, it would cause pain on both sides. Politically, it could divide Europe. Diplomatically, it could damage relations with two of the most important players in the world economy. Trump's idea reflects his style: clear, forceful, and disruptive. But whether it is workable, whether it would succeed in ending the war, remains deeply uncertain. For now, it is a proposal that raises more questions than it answers, a reminder that in today's world, trade and war are no longer separate fields but parts of the same struggle. This is Falcon Times. Thank you for listening and stay with us as we continue to follow how these decisions unfold and what they mean for the future of the global order.